The Cost of Silence, the Town That Never Talks. Fairview, Ohio was a postcard-perfect town. Maple-lined streets, a historic courthouse square, and a diner where locals swapped gossip over coffee. On crisp fall mornings, the high school marching band practiced in the distance, and the air smelled of leaves and apple pie. But beneath the surface, Fairview had an unspoken rule. Keep your head down and don't ask questions. At the heart of the town was the Fairview County Courthouse, a brick building with a clock tower that chimed every hour. Inside, Mayor Harold Hal Whitaker, a silver-haired man in his late 50s, had run the town for nearly 2 decades. Hal was a master of small-town charm, shaking hands at church, sponsoring the 4th of July parade, and always ready with a folksy quip. But his warm smile hid a ruthless streak. Fairview's prosperity, its new community center, its well-funded schools came at a cost, and Hal made sure no one talked about it. A few miles from the courthouse, in a modest ranch-style house on Elm Street, lived Ellie Harper, a 30-year-old high school English teacher. Ellie was a Fairview native, with auburn hair and a quiet intensity that made her students listen. She loved teaching To Kill a Mockingbird and The Crucible, urging her kids to question authority and stand up for what's right. But in Fairview, those lessons felt like whispers against a storm. Ellie had seen too many people punished for speaking out. Neighbors fired, businesses shut down, reputations ruined. One October morning, as Ellie walked to school, she noticed police tape outside the town's only independent newspaper office. The Fairview Beacon, run by a stubborn editor named Marcus Tate, had been vandalized. Windows were smashed, computers destroyed, and files strewn across the floor. Marcus, a black man in his 40s who'd moved to Fairview a decade ago, stood outside talking to Sheriff Dale Carver. Dale, a burly man with a permanent scowl, scribbled in his notebook but didn't seem too concerned. Ellie overheard Marcus say, "This wasn't random, Dale. I was working on a story about the land deal, the one Hal pushed through last year." Dale's eyes narrowed and he muttered something about no evidence. Ellie's stomach churned. She knew the land deal Marcus meant, a prime piece of farmland sold dirt cheap to a developer with ties to Hal. Rumors swirled about kickbacks, but no one dared dig deeper. As Ellie continued to school, she passed a group of students whispering about Marcus. One of them, 17-year-old Jamal Carter, a star running back on the football team, caught her eye. Jamal was one of her best students, always asking questions about justice and fairness. He looked shaken. "Miss Harper," he said quietly, "they're saying Marcus is in trouble because he wouldn't shut up. Is that true?" Ellie hesitated. She wanted to tell him to stay out of it, to keep safe. But looking into his eyes, she couldn't lie. "Sometimes, Jamal," she said, "the truth makes people uncomfortable." The quiet rebels. That evening, Ellie met with a small group at Rosie's Diner, a greasy spoon on the edge of town, where the jukebox still played Johnny Cash. The group called themselves the Watchers, a nod to their mission of keeping an eye on Fairview's secrets. They weren't revolutionaries, just ordinary people tired of the town's lies. Sitting across from Ellie was Rosa Martini, a 35-year-old nurse who worked at the county hospital. Rosa had seen too many accidents involving people who crossed Hal. Broken bones, overdoses, car crashes that didn't add up. She kept her own records hidden in a locked drawer at home. Next to Rosa was Nate Sullivan, a 28-year-old mechanic who'd grown up in Fairview's trailer park. Nate had a quick laugh and a quicker temper, especially when it came to the town's elite. He'd lost his brother to a drug bust that felt more like a setup than justice. The final member was Marcus Tate, who showed up despite the vandalism at his office. His hands were still smudged with ink from cleaning up the mess. "They think they can scare me off," Marcus said, his voice steady, "but I've got backups of everything. The land deal's just the tip of the iceberg. Hal's been skimming county funds for years. Schools, roads, even the hospital. I just need hard proof. Ellie leaned forward. What kind of proof? Marcus lowered his voice. There's a woman who used to work in the mayor's office, Clara Evans. She was Hal's secretary until she quit last year. Word is she kept copies of emails, contracts, bank records, stuff that could bury him. But she's scared. Lives out by the old quarry now, keeps to herself. Rosa frowned. If we go to Clara, we're putting her in danger, and ourselves. Nate shrugged. We're already in danger. You think Hal doesn't know who we are? He's got eyes everywhere. Dale, the council, half the cops. Ellie thought of Jamal's face that morning. We can't keep doing nothing, she said. If we don't act, kids like Jamal will grow up thinking this is normal. That silence is the only way to survive. Marcus nodded. Then we find Clara, but we move carefully. The woman who knew too much. Clara Evans lived in a small cabin near the abandoned quarry, a place where the air smelled of damp earth and pine. The watchers drove out late at night, their headlights cutting through the fog. Ellie knocked on the door, her pulse racing. After a long pause, Clara answered. A frail woman in her 60s with sharp blue eyes and a trembling hand. I know why you're here, Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. And I told myself I'd never talk. Hal's got ways of making people disappear. We're not asking you to go public, Marcus said. Just give us what you have. We'll do the rest. Clara studied them, her gaze lingering on Ellie. You're the teacher, aren't you? I've heard about you. You remind me of myself years ago. Thought I could change things. She sighed and led them inside. The cabin was sparse with a single lamp casting long shadows. Clara pulled a shoebox from under her bed filled with USB drives and printed emails. This is everything, she said. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, contracts with fake companies, even orders to Sheriff Dale to handle troublemakers. I kept it all, thinking one day I'd be brave enough to use it. Ellie's hands shook as she skimmed the documents. One email stood out, a directive from Hal to Dale, ordering the arrest of a local activist who'd questioned the land deal. The activist had died in custody, ruled a suicide. Ellie felt sick. Thank you, Clara, she said. We'll keep you safe. Clara shook her head. No one's safe in Fairview. Not when Hal's in charge. The fire spreads. The watchers spent weeks planning. Marcus uploaded Clara's documents to a secure server, sharing them with a trusted contact at a Cleveland news station. Rosa reached out to hospital staff quietly building support. Nate worked the bars and garages, spreading word among the working-class folks who'd long resented Hal's cronies. Ellie organized her students, encouraging them to write essays about justice and share them online. Jamal, inspired by Ellie, started a blog posting about the Beacon vandalism and the land deal. But Hal wasn't blind. Sheriff Dale ramped up patrols, stopping people for minor infractions. Nate was pulled over twice in a week. His truck searched for no reason. Rosa got a warning from her boss about stirring trouble. And Ellie found an anonymous note in her mailbox. Stop, or you'll regret it. The breaking point came when Jamal was arrested. He'd been at a football game, celebrating a touchdown, when Dale's deputies hauled him off for disorderly conduct. The charges were flimsy, but the message was clear. No one was untouchable. Ellie called an emergency meeting at Rosie's diner. We can't wait anymore, she said. Jamal's just a kid. If we don't act now, Hal will crush us one by one. Marcus agreed. The Cleveland station's ready to run the story, but it won't mean anything unless we show Fairview's not afraid. We need to take this to the streets. They planned a rally outside the courthouse, the biggest Fairview had ever seen. Rosa printed flyers, Nate rallied his buddies, and Marcus used the Beacon's social media to spread the word. Ellie wrote a speech, her words fueled by years of frustration. The day Fairview spoke. On a chilly November morning, the courthouse square was packed. Hundreds of people, teachers, farmers, students, retirees, stood shoulder to shoulder. Jamal's mother, a single mom who worked 2 jobs, held a sign that read, "Free my son." Ellie climbed onto a bench, her voice shaking as she began her speech. "Fairview's been silent too long," she said. "We've let fear run this town. Fear of losing our jobs, our homes, our lives. But today we say enough. We demand justice for Jamal, for Marcus, for everyone Hal's tried to silence. We're not just a town. We're a community, and we're done being afraid." The crowd roared, their voices echoing off the courthouse walls. Sheriff Dale and his deputies stood at the edges, hands on their batons, but they didn't move. Even some of the deputies looked uneasy, glancing at each other. Marcus stepped up next, holding a megaphone. "We have proof," he said. "Documents that show Hal Whitaker's been stealing from us, our schools, our roads, our future. It's all coming out, and he can't stop it." As the rally grew, a news van from Cleveland pulled up, cameras rolling. Hal watched from his office, his face pale. For the first time, he looked small, powerless. The reckoning. The rally didn't end Hal's reign immediately, but it changed Fairview forever. The Cleveland station aired Marcus's story, and state investigators descended on the town. Hal was indicted on corruption charges, his empire crumbling. Sheriff Dale resigned, replaced by a reform-minded outsider. Jamal was released. His charges dropped. But the victory came at a cost. Ellie lost her job, deemed too controversial by the school board. Rosa faced harassment at work. Nate's truck was torched, though no one could prove who did it. Marcus kept publishing, but the Beacon struggled to stay afloat. Clara Evans emerged from hiding, testifying against Hal in court. Her courage inspired others to come forward, former council members, business owners, even a deputy who'd grown tired of Dale's orders. Fairview began to heal, but the scars remained. Ellie started a community center, teaching free classes on civics and literature. Jamal, now a senior, applied to college, dreaming of becoming a lawyer. Rosa and Nate stayed in Fairview, rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. Marcus won a journalism award, his name synonymous with truth.